What's the real weight of a crown? We're told stories about leadership being a path to glory, a destined climb to power. But in the grim, weird, twisted world of Tainted Grail, a crown isn't a symbol of triumph, it's a prison. Every choice is a sacrifice. Every victory is paid for in blood and regret. And every follower's hope is another stone added to a weight that's already unbearable. On the surface, Tainted Grail Fall of Avalon is a dark reimagination of Arthurian legends, where you quest, loot, and fight your way through a world on the brink. But as you play, your choices weave a different story. The story of how power can become a cage, how leading can lead you to compromise, and why even a legend like King Arthur would want nothing more than to be free from his own myth. By the time we reach the end of our story in the crumbling land of Avalon, we'll learn that leadership and legacy can take on a form wholly unrelated to what a leader intended. We'll see how leadership is not a privilege, but in certain cases, an agony. A long, slow defeat that chews you up and leaves nothing behind but a ghost. A ghost that might not even be yours. Leadership is often sold to us as a noble calling. A leader is a protector, a visionary, a beacon, but dark fantasy as a genre loves to tear down those ideals and show the rot underneath. It suggests that the very things that make someone a leader, ambition, conviction, the will to power, are also the seeds of their corruption and despair. I, for one, am obsessed with the dark side of leadership, where the line between a hero and a tyrant blurs until it is nearly gone. Maybe it's because of where I grew up, how I grew up. Those of you who have been following the channel, thank you by the way, know I grew up in Syria. I've spoken at length about all the horrors I suffered under the tyrannical Syrian regime. Every day was a fight for survival. Basic rights became the highest of privilege. I won't make this too long for those of you who already know all about it, but I'd like to take you all on a little journey into my past. Imagine a freezing winter night, snow piling up outside, not a soul wandering about. Your mind probably went to a cozy fire, a heated apartment, maybe a cup of cocoa. For me and many others in Syria, winter was horror. We'd spend those freezing nights without warmth or light, no electricity to warm us up, no gasoline to light a fire. Our leader, or the tyrant who called himself a leader, implemented a smart card system. And I use the word smart very loosely. Every few months or weeks, you would be allowed to purchase basic needs. Things like rice, sugar, cooking oil, gas for your car. You would receive an SMS allowing you to buy these things at designated centers using the smart card. Things like rice and sugar, you could get every couple of weeks, but more valuable things like gasoline would take months until you would be allowed to purchase them. And it's not like it was cheap. It's not like it was convenient. It was just another way to control, deprive, humiliate, and torture us. Oftentimes, as I froze under layers of blankets in the dark or stood for hours and hours in endless queues waiting to receive that oh so precious gasoline, I would ask myself, does Bashar know? Does he know how much I despise him? Does he know the pain he causes? While he and his mafia live large, stealing from the people, benefiting from our suffering, does he know what we go through? Does he care? Was there ever a leader inside him, or was he never anything more than a sadistic tyrant? As much as characters like Caradoc want us to, I can't say the same for King Arthur. Even though he made mistakes, even though his choices weren't always the best ones, I went into Tainted Grail looking to scratch the Skyrim itch. Slowly, I found myself enamored with the world, particularly the fact that I got to see it through the eyes of its former leader, traveling alongside Arthur, reliving his journey, revisiting his choices, all these feelings, all these memories, wondering what my suffering meant to my oppressor, came flooding back to me. Tainted Grail's world is a relentless meat grinder of morale. Plague called the Red Death shattered the old world, so humans fled to Avalon hoping for a sanctuary, only to be welcomed by a weirdly hostile land. And when I say weird, I mean it literally. Avalon is permeated by the weirdness, a strange, ominous fog that warps reality, mutates life, and drives minds to madness. In this landscape of endless crisis, to lead is to be the one who makes the impossible choices. Who gets the last of the rations? Which village has to be sacrificed to stop some blighted monster? Who do you condemn to a horrifying death just to save a few more? The only leader my country ever knew was a madman, but I've since come to learn that leaders are supposed to be strong, wise, and selfless. Seeing King Arthur's past, peering into the most difficult choices he's had to make, helped me realize that these expectations can become a crushing weight. A leader, at the end of the day, is still a human, and their humanity is often at war with the mortifying responsibility the job requires. The crown is a crown of thorns. It isolates you. It nudges you ever so slightly to betray your own morals for the greater good. And worst of all, it turns you from a person into a symbol, a hollowed-out vessel for the hopes and fears of a broken people. And nobody in the world understands that better than the most famous leader of them all, King Arthur. In our world, King Arthur is the good king, a symbol of justice and hope. In Tainted Grail, he's much the same, only fractured. Many years later, after he led his people to Avalon to escape the Red Death and overcame a devastating war, the land is haunted by his legacy. The story we get isn't about Arthur the man, it's about the idea of Arthur, an idea that's been co-opted, twisted, and weaponized by every faction fighting for power. After his death, Arthur's legacy doesn't unite people, it divides them. Different parties vying for power claim to be his true successors, using his name to justify their rule. His values are rewritten to fit their agendas. His sword, his shield, his helmet, symbols he left after his passing to guide his people, are used to continuously bring him back. Again and again and again, every time something goes wrong, instead of uniting, instead of leading their own way, they bring their fallen king back as a crutch. And after they're done with him, things quickly become worse than when they first started falling apart. In the process of bringing Arthur back, they summon his wisdom, his courage, his power, everything they want in a king, and neglect his humanity. They neglect the very thing that makes Arthur King Arthur. Over hundreds of years, King Arthur's humanity is buried under the weight of symbols placed upon him, symbols he may have never intended to portray. The people of Avalon don't care about the man who lived, they care about the legend that gives them hope. And for the people calling Arthur back from the dead time after time, Arthur is nothing but a tool to work their agenda, a means to an end. The game explores this through its main conflict. Your journey has you literally piecing together King Arthur's fragmented soul, and when you finally collect all the pieces, one is missing: humanity. Caradoc, the person who saved you, setting everything in motion, is a former knight of the Round Table who is now so disillusioned that his life's mission is to destroy every piece of Arthur's soul.
You need to understand that people thought, and still think, that he was more than human. But he wasn't. He made mistakes, just like any man. And the cost of those mistakes was always paid for by others. I've seen what happens when people cling to kings and myths. They wait, they follow, they waste their lives on promises that never meant anything.
He views Arthur's desperate actions during the war with the weirdness as a betrayal of the people of Avalon.
But then came the cost. The war crimes, the impossible decisions, the massacres, slaughters, and irrational cruelty.
He sees Arthur as a failure of a leader who made cruel choices, ultimately causing more harm than good, and wants to break the cycle of Arthur's resurrection for good.
Arthur wasn't a god, a savior, or a king. He was just another man, no different from the rest of us.
On the other side is Orin, Merlin's last student. Merlin being one of Arthur's most loyal allies who insists that only a restored king can save the land.
When the king died, his soul wasn't allowed to move on. It was shattered, bound to those artifacts. A clever solution, but ultimately flawed. They feared losing what Arthur represented more than losing Arthur himself. They thought the king's essence would endure, if bound to his relics. You can't pick and choose with a soul, but that's exactly what Merlin did. He focused on 3 parts of Arthur: his strength, wisdom, and courage. He left out 2 pieces. One, tainted by the Four Dwellers' magic, was deemed too dangerous. The other was his humanity, the most fragile part.
With humanity or without it, Avalon and its people need a leader. They need Arthur, and regardless if Arthur wants to or not, Orin needs to resurrect him once again. But there's a third choice, and it comes from listening to a meager fisherman by the name of Hob.
You've come. The one who carries what's left of me. Please, don't come any closer. Don't force me to think about coming back again. Just let me finally die. Because I've had enough. Enough of being torn apart and stitched back together. Enough of being used, shaped, and forced to be something I'm not. Do you know what it is like to be a king of nothing? To see the people you swore to protect suffer because of your choices? Or worse, in your name. I've seen towns burnt to the ground, families destroyed, all because someone thought it would serve the greater good. And they called it loyalty. They called it justice. I've been dragged through every dream, every lie they've built around me. And I'm tired. Tired of the weight, of the expectations, of all of it. And most of all, I'm tired of failing. Kill me. Destroy the last piece of me and use the energy however you wish. Take it yourself and become the new king. Give it to someone else. I don't care. Just don't let me come back again. Let me die. Not as Arthur, not as the king, just as a simple, normal human being.
Hob is the last shred of Arthur's humanity, who simply begs for the release of death, tired of the endless cycle of responsibility. The reason previous cycles failed is because pieces of Arthur, strength, wisdom, courage, aren't enough. You need Arthur, all of King Arthur, to have any hope of making things right. Every single aspect of the king was devoted to Avalon and its people, but his humanity is tired. It's tired of seeing his failures shoved in his face. It's tired of fighting. It's tired of dying. It's tired of leading. It's tired of seeing others parade his legacy around for their twisted goals and desires. This is the agony of being a symbol. Arthur's greatest desire isn't to rule again, but to be free, to be liberated from the prison of his own legend. King Arthur is forced to represent ideals he might not even believe in anymore, and he has to watch his name get used for things he would have never stood for. In the end, the people's need for a savior became its own form of tyranny. One of the game's endings sees the player letting Arthur's soul pass on, leaving the people of Avalon to forge a new path for the first time, with either an untested king to guide them, or no king at all. This asks a terrifying but necessary question. What happens when people are finally forced to lead themselves? If Arthur represents the burden of a single mythic leader, the factions of Avalon represent the agony of collective leadership, poisoned by flawed traditions. As the player, you're often tasked with uniting different groups like the Dalriata and the Fallen Swords, but to do so, you have to confront the rot deep inside their cultures. Many of these groups are case studies in how tradition, thought to be a source of strength, can curdle into immense suffering. Their leaders are bound by rituals and beliefs set by figures long dead, and they keep the suffering going in the name of honor. For example, one of the tribes expects their women to become matrons, imbibing in a potion whose eldritch origin they do not fully grasp. forcing their women to live in pain on the constant brink of madness in complete isolation for the rest of their time. It is nothing but pure suffering disguised as age-old tradition. Most tribes we see have a complex relationship with the weirdness. Some see it as a source of power or a path to understanding, even as it mutates them. In these cases, you, the player, are a catalyst. You're an outsider who can see the flaws in their traditions that they're blind to. But the game is smart enough to know that you can't just force change. You can point out the problem, investigate the cause, but the leaders have to choose the way forward. The game opened my eyes to an aspect of leadership I never thought about. How leadership can become a generational curse of sorts. Leaders of countries, leaders of families can get trapped by the decisions of those who came before them. To break free takes an almost unthinkable amount of courage. To question the very foundations of your identity, to betray the honor of your ancestors, and to admit that the ways that have defined your people for centuries are actually a path to ruin. Most leaders aren't strong enough. They choose the comfort of tradition over the terror of change, and so the cycle of suffering just keeps going. Sometimes the most destructive force isn't an external enemy, but a broken idea that's taken root inside a culture. Again, this got me thinking about my country, Syria, and the conditions our so-called leader put us through. There was never a greater good, and there was never an end to justify the means. It was a senseless massacre with bullets, bombs, and chemical barrels, followed by over a decade of silent genocide, the killing of our dreams, drowning of our hopes, and desecration of our futures. Want to know what the worst part is? Nobody in the world hurt Syrians more than Syrians. Bashar put in place a system to deprive us of our rights, strip us of our dignity, but it was fellow Syrians who did the work. The violence, corruption, blind support for a tyrannical government. It all came from within. Can you believe that there are still, to this very day, defenders of that tyrannical regime? And they often say that they didn't have a choice, but we always do. I lived 22 years in Syria, and never once in my life did I hurt anyone or set foot in a voting booth for that vile monster. Not that it mattered, he would have won anyway, but I had a choice. I chose, and I followed through. I led my life myself, no matter the consequences. Seeing different leaders and the different forms leadership takes on in Tainted Grail allowed me to view the concept in a different lens. Imagine what it must feel like to be both feared and hated by millions. To know your privilege depends on the continued suffering of your own people. Can someone in a position like that ever find peace? Leaders, good or bad, are at their core human. They might feel guilt, regret, or despair, but those emotions get buried under the crushing weight of power and the need to survive. So where does that leave us? If leadership is a prison and leaders are more likely to poison a nation than lead it, what's the alternative? Who do we follow? The Horns of the South, Kuwanokt, Fallen Swords, everywhere we've been and everyone we've helped up until this point lead us to an answer. True leadership isn't ruling over others, but ruling over yourself. It's about forging your own code, defining your own morals, and living by them, even when the world pushes you to abandon them. True strength isn't found in a crown or on a throne. It's in the courage to make your own choices and accept the consequences without hiding behind or forcing them on others. The agony of leadership is the responsibility for others. The hope is the responsibility for yourself. Tainted Grail, Fall of Avalon is a powerful argument against the great man theory of history. It argues that relying on a single savior, a mythic king, is at the very core a weakness. I think real progress can only come from a collective of individuals who are each leading themselves with empathy, understanding, and a commitment to their own values, building themselves up and building the people around them to do the same. Tainted Grail is a tragedy. It's a story about failure, loss, and the weight of impossible choices. Following blindly in any which way amplifies that darkness. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, especially when it is a crown made of thorns. But if you refuse to wear it, if you stick to your morals, if you make an effort to understand others and respect their paths, you can be a damn great leader, one that doesn't leave behind an eternity of burden.
Do what you think is right. That's all I can tell you, because whatever you decide, it will finally be your choice. Not mine. Not theirs.
Thank you all for joining me on this deep dive into the grim heart of Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon. I seriously loved this game. I wasn't intending to make a video on it, but the ending clicked for me in a crazy way. It just brought back a lot of feelings and memories. If you enjoyed this analysis, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more. Join the Discord if you want to hang out and chat in our little community. Last but not least, memberships for the channel are open if you want to help me make more videos like this, but bigger and better. Just remember, it's never required, but always appreciated. That's all from me today. Be safe going through the weirdness, gang, alright? Catch you all next time.